Good morning to everyone. I hope you're doing well. It's rainy weather here in North Mississippi. I bet y'all are getting some rain as well. Good to see you. Hey, Liz Barber, I see you nodding. She's waving. Hey, Liz. I'm Daryl Jones with the Mississippi State University Extension Service and Mississippi State University, and I'm in the Department of Wildlife Fisheries and Aquaculture. I'm a wildlife professor. Glad you joined us this morning. We're going to have some more folks probably popping in as I begin speaking. I hope you have had the opportunity to participate in the webinars all week long, and including this one today. And if you haven't, if you missed one or had trouble getting on earlier in the week, all these are being recorded, including this one today, and we'll post those to the Natural Resource Enterprises webpage, which is my website. We'll post those hopefully by next week, so you can go back at your convenience and look at those and catch information you may want to look at again or didn't see the first time, and look forward to you doing that. So Monday we had I talked about hunting leases and NRE opportunities. Tuesday, we did legal considerations of having folks on your property. Wednesday was social media marketing, which was a good talk about Facebook, Instagram, website development. Yesterday was farm bill program opportunities for your property. And then today is business planning. So in developed writing or drafting or thinking about a business model, business plan. So that's kind of the lineup we've done. So those will be available for you. So I'm going to talk again about business plan development. First part of my talk will be somewhat of a repeat for those that heard me speak on Monday. We're going to talk about natural resource enterprises or the notion of having people on your land to recreate and paying for that opportunity. And that would include everything from hunting, fishing, watching of wildlife, agritourism or farm tours, eco or nature-based tourism, all kinds of things, zip lines, nature trails, all kinds of opportunities like that if you're interested in doing it. I am with the Extension Service, so I say that to you to say the Extension Service got a lot of good information, lots of good horsepower to help you think through some of these options, including Vern Allen, I work with him and myself, but use your county extension folks as much as you can as well. And my website that you'll see at the last slide I carried today has a lot of information you can go to. But what I was going to say, being a wildlife professor, I'm not trying to talk you in or sell you any information. I just want to provide you some good technical information, and today particularly business related information to help you think through as a landowner, business owner, or potential business owner. Landowner, what you can do with your property to diversify income. So that's my target today that I'm going to try to talk about. So the first part of my comments will be on some activities that you can think about and have some economic numbers that you might have already seen if you were here with me on Monday, but it'd be good to go back over those. And then I'll knife into the segments of a business plan that would be good for you as an entrepreneur to think about. I'm an old ex-banker, and in that way, I don't know how to say, I guess I'm crusty around the edges, so to speak, dealing with, when I used to lend money and dealing with business opportunities and thinking of it in kind of a straightforward, conservative way, so you have a wise use of your money and don't lose money. And that being said, I'm as quick to talk people out of hopefully bad decisions as I am to encourage them to start a business. You know, the best decision you can make if it's a bad decision is not to do it. So that's kind of from whence I'm coming from and the way I'll attack this. So really good to have you this morning. And I hope you enjoy the comments that I make. And we have a chat box as well, as y'all well know. And my friend Vern here with me, you can't see him, he's off to my side. He'll help me monitor questions. You can ask questions along the way. We can kind of do this informally, but at the end, we'll roll through and try to answer as many questions as we can. So, and if we don't get to something, or you don't want to ask it today, you can always contact me. I've got my contact information after the fact. We can come back to anything you want to talk about. So as I mentioned, I'm from the Mississippi, the lower Delta here in Mississippi, and tell you just real quickly about me, not to dwell on, but my dad was was a banker, and had a lot of farm loans in the lower Delta, North Vicksburg. And I grew up wanting to be like him. So I was a banker at one time. Right out of school at Mississippi State, I became a banker. I've always had interest in wildlife and conservation, and actually was trained in marine science and was a coastal zone manager for several years. Worked in Washington, D.C. with one of the federal agencies. And when I came back to Mississippi, did my PhD here, and then decided to be a professor at the university. So I tell you all that to say, I kind of had a mixed bag background and probably think of things a little bit different. But again, I'll wear my banking hat a good bit today, and we'll talk about financing and some of this kind of thing, or in opportunities economically speaking. So this program, what I try to do is to deal with landowners that have property that are interested in looking at having guests on their property to recreate with using wildlife and outdoor adventures. So that's in hunting and fishing, watching of wildlife, horse trail riding, just to name a few, farm tours, agritourism, rural accommodations, all that. Mississippi is, as you well know, is quite popular for worldwide clientele, people from other U.S. states to come and see because of our history and the beauty of our land. Want to meet you as Mississippians, so to speak. So people come here, as you well know, to recreate. So over the past number of years, the U.S. Department of Interior, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, related to hunting, fishing, and outdoor wildlife watching, conduct a survey to look at how many people participate in what I'm calling outdoor recreation, but this is actually wildlife-related recreation, and what they spend. So that every year this goes on, every 5 years they do the survey, and the numbers keep stair-stepping up. At the last numbers, they had over 100 million people recreate outdoors, wildlife-related recreation, spending almost $160 billion, broken out by hunting, fishing, and the watching of wildlife. So these numbers continue again to escalate. A lot of this is done in rural counties in the state. So a lot of this money stays in rural Mississippi and rural America. And it's done on public lands. And what I mean by public lands is national forests, wildlife, national wildlife refuges, state lands like wildlife management areas here in Mississippi. So I hunt on some of those, like those wildlife management areas that the state of Mississippi owns and manages. So I recreate on public lands, but a good chunk of this is also done on private lands as well. And that's you. That's you. That could be on private lands at your property or around the country. So there's opportunities there. What does this boil down to? And I'm kind of drilling down here a little bit to give you, in our local area, in our 3-state ARCLMIS area, Arkansas, Louisiana, and Mississippi. These are the activities, the way they break out. So about 2 million anglers spending almost $2 billion on an annual basis. Hunting, about 1 billion hunters spending $1.8 billion, almost $2 billion. And then watching of wildlife, over 2 million participants spending $1 billion. We have a lot of this in Mississippi. Through our Mississippi Delta, for example, on the Mississippi River, and in our coastal zone where you have lots of people that are recreating outdoors, have a lot of wildlife watching in those areas because those watersheds are good venues for not only wildlife watching, but you've got bird life, particularly neotropical migrants that will migrate to South America, Central America, and come back to the United States, or visiting or using this coastal zone area, using the Mississippi Delta, using these fertile wetlands in those areas. So people go and watch these birds in those areas. So it's quite popular. People from worldwide come and do that in Mississippi, as in other U.S. states. So we have tremendous opportunities, I think, in the United States with all of our rural lands and our public lands that serve as good wildlife habitat, that people can watch wildlife. So these numbers are at those. I'm really drilling down on wildlife watching. Those numbers continue to enhance every year. So these numbers here, I just wanted to show you is what wildlife related recreation means to Mississippi from an economic impact standpoint. So took those expenditures from those annual surveys that I just talked about and put them through a kind of metrics model, if you will, put them through a model calculation to look at what the economic impact of the state is. And this is actually, need to do this again, the numbers I think would be even higher, but you see what it means annually to Mississippi. So about almost $3 billion annually in economic impact to the state of Mississippi from hunting, fishing, and wildlife watching. So that's a lot of resources to the state. And so this is me talking to y'all here. I think it's a good also reason for us to protect those natural resources that we have out there, use them wisely, but also this means a lot of money to the state. And so it's good, smart economic development for wildlife-related recreation. Again, a lot of this is done on private lands, so you can take advantage of that if you're interested in it. So I talked about this on Monday, but I thought I would go back and kind of cover some of this. In hunting leases, this is what an option that many landowners, kind of a low-intensive, non-intensive way that you can get involved with a natural resource enterprise where you're not on the front line running a business day in and day out. You do need to take some time to think about your leasing opportunities and setting up a lease, writing a lease agreement. I can help you. We can help you do that. You need to think about it, but it's less intensive than, say, doing a hunting outfitter business, or say a bird watching business, or an agritourism business where you're there on a front line dealing with people every day. Hunting leases, you can do that. You need to stay involved with the people, your lessees that you're dealing with, but that's something that is entertaining, that's good for people to think about, because it doesn't take as much time to do this. It doesn't take a lot of your daily time. So what can you charge on a per acre basis? What I've seen in the past years, I've noticed that leasing rates in Mississippi will run, as you see there, a range of $5 to $65 an acre, and can be higher in our Mississippi Delta dealing with waterfowl. Waterfowl is kind of a big ticket item where you got duck hunters, goose hunters that will pay more per acre, particularly to lease rice ground where rice is produced, cereal grains, corn as well, but particularly rice, where these birds are habituated to and they feed on. So some of the lease price can be in the $100, $150 range an acre on some of waterfowl. But the general range for leasing for white-tailed deer, of course, deer hunting, turkey hunting, is in this range that you're seeing here, $5 to $65. I have people call me, and I don't mean this in a critical way, but as an advice to folks, is to stay up with the leasing market a little bit, because the trend line is up with this. I've had people call, say I'm leasing my land for $2 or $3 an acre, and so they're probably a little bit under the market. So another good way to look at pricing, 16th section properties, you'll see my bullet there, about an average of $7 to $11 an acre. Those are maintained, those are hunting leases that the Mississippi Secretary of State's office will coordinate. and you can check their pricing on 16th section lands in your county to see what tracts are leasing for. Do some investigation on what the land cover is. So if it's been clear cut, for example, nothing wrong with clear cutting, don't mean it that way, but if it's been cut over recently, probably the wildlife value may not be great for deer and turkey, for example. So your lease value may be less. So know what your land cover is before you set your pricing on your property. But if you've got more mature forest stands, it's going to be on the higher range. That second bullet I've got there, I did a study several years ago, again, need to repeat it, but on better tracts of property where you have diverse lands, hydrant soils, wetland areas, you got timber on it, particularly a mixture of hardwoods and pine, this older age class where older age class timber where some has been harvested, but they maintain good stands, have forest openings, pasture, they have some water on the property, so good those are in the $20 range an acre on average lease prices. So again, that gives you some kind of a thumbnail sketch on what your pricing would be. So at least get your land taxes and look at other leases like I talked about. And separating your leases, what I mean with the hunting leases there is that some landowners can diversify. They'll lease for whitetail deer in the fall and the winter, and then we'll do a turkey hunting lease in the spring. Maybe to the same people, maybe to a different set of hunters or recreationalists. So by separating your leases, you'll obviously increase your overall lease income intake. Fee fishing is growing in demand. I also have a little information there about charter boat outings as well. Just there to give you a feel to compare to. But freshwater fishing on private lands, on private waters, and also on public waters, rivers that the state will own, of course, and reservoirs and pound. That's growing in demand. Fishing continues to go up nationally. Can be conducted, particularly with fee hunting, quite a bit. There's a property owner in South Alabama. We did an NRE workshop several years ago, Level Woods in Greene County, Alabama, where he started as a hunting operation, but then diversified into fishing, has about 100 acres of managed impoundments for largemouth bass, and he makes more on the fishing than he does the hunting. So it can be done together, and that's in different times of the year, so he stretches out his revenue stream over the course of a year. So again, just thinking about, now it costs money to build ponds. I'm not telling you to go out and start building ponds, because that bulldozer time, pushing dirt, building levees costs money. But if you've already got that resource out there, lakes, impoundments on your property, something you can utilize. We can help you with fish management, with extension service. We have someone on staff here in the department that does that. So get expertise there. You can pay for that expertise, but we at the university have already paid for us, so to speak. So use us in that regard. I can help you with that. Amenities that you offer with boat rentals, guiding, staying in cabins on the property, or camping out to fish, that can help escalate the pricing per day. There's fishing leases, just like with hunting leases. There are permits per day. There's also what's called more of a fish out type setup where people, particularly with catfish, they'll pay for the pound kind of thing. There's different type approaches to that. Charter boat industry coming back online, particularly, I think, good. Recovering well from the Deep Horizon oil spill we had a couple of years back. So it's coming back and increasing in revenue streams there. These people that run charter boats on the Gulf Coast that fish in the Mississippi Sound, our near coast waters, and then offshore as well around the barrier islands. So, of course, those are state-owned waters, but they run that operation out of their charter boats. So again, just to give you that, those are monies made as well and come to the state. Horse trail riding continue to be popular. Particularly in the Southeast and in the Midwest and in the Western states. Public land managers, what I mean there, national forests, refuge managers or wildlife refuges, usually don't have a lot of money for staff where they can run their operations per se. They're staying ahead of the curve in the land management, timber production, some of this. They like to partner and collaborate with private adjacent landowners. And what I have seen in the past is where private landowners adjacent, say to a national forest, will collaborate with them on horse trail riding. So they can ride on the national forest or wildlife refuge, camp on the private lands, get the horses out, also ride some on private lands. So it's a good tandem combination there where the private landowner will just provide lodging and hookups for the trailers, inexpensive, relatively speaking, and that's becoming more popular. Texas really does a lot of this. We're seeing this in Mississippi as well. Of course, horses can hurt you. So I mentioned this last time. If I were doing this, I would think about letting them bring their own horses. But there are these pay ride type situations where we'll talk some about legal issues. But horses can hurt you, and I would prefer, and if I was doing horse trail, and I can talk to you about this, let them bring their own horses before you think about providing horses. But you can certainly provide horses. There are ways around the liability issue there. Bird watching, part of that wildlife watching, nature watching segment. Lots of folks, about a quarter of Americans say they participate in this, spend money doing it, travel to do it. Quite compatible with a hunting operation. Seen this in other states like Texas, where hunting operators will also, during non-hunting times, will have birding tours where nature photography is being done out of the same hunting blinds. In the fall, there were hunting blinds they use as blinds to take photographs of wildlife coming to watering impoundments, coming to ponds. So again, quite compatible. The older I get, I like to watch wildlife and less on the hunting part, actually. So lots of hunters like to watch wildlife, especially as we get to the golden years. So a good compatible land use there. Agritourism is one of the fastest growing tourism markets. The Mississippi Department of Agriculture and Commerce supports this industry. Our Mississippi legislature passed an agritourism law to give inherent protection or give protection to landowners with sponsoring farm tours. If someone comes on the property, pays to come on the property and turns an ankle in a stump hole, gets stung by a bee, if you're registered with the Department of Agriculture, Mississippi Department of Agriculture, you get some inherent protection from the Mississippi legislative law on people getting hurt from the inherent risk of nature. So I tell you that to say, take advantage. If you're doing agritourism or want to do this, it's a good way to get some added protection from liability issues. But these farm tours, you-pick operations, corn mazes, farmers markets, all these are continue to be popular. Farmers market, one comes to mind. All over the state, we're developing these. In Jackson, they're very popular. I know some producers that are organic farmers that actually USDA has helped, NRCS has helped. We've done workshops on some of these that are really doing well in providing vegetables and fruits and produce to farmers market. There are particularly urban dwellers like this, and organic farming and produce continues to be very popular. So again, not pushing you to do it, just there's lots of opportunities here that you can explore. Agritourism too, family entertainment with youth groups and church groups. These are a lot of your primary customer base. Lots of these types of tourism venues are open in the fall. So it can be a September, October, November time frame, and they're not open in July when it's hot. So it's not an all-year type thing, which is good. You don't have to do it all year. But you're in the entertainment business. You're dealing with youth groups and church groups and various other families bringing their children out. So you have to like that and be good at that, have opportunities. It's about $150 million industry to the state of Mississippi. Shooting sports continues to be quite popular. I think I showed this slide last time for folks on the leasing talk, but about 20 million people participate nationwide in shooting sports. pistols, rifles, shotguns, also not in this, but also archery, quite popular. So spending about 17 million with about 5 million of that with travel. So quite a bit happens in that local market from this group to participate in shooting sports. Other opportunities, I think Mississippi is quite steeped in rural accommodation, bed and breakfast. Rural accommodation is quite popular. And if you're located, you know, as they say in real estate, location is key. If you're located closer to an urban area or a metropolitan area or suburbia, like in the Gulf Coast or not far from Jackson, not far from Tupelo or South Haven, out in the rural area, but people in those more urban areas looking for opportunities to get out in rural Mississippi, stay on a place, meet you, see pretty sunrises as they're drinking coffee. Bed and breakfast is a good opportunity. And again, this doesn't have to be run all year as well. Some other thing, music, we're quite steeped in Mississippi with blues music, country music, rock and roll. So that ties to the value of rural lands, and there's a lot of times about that rural land. So another tie, I think, to Mississippi, our culture, literature, history is appealing. Some of our history is somewhat challenging. And so, as you well know, so that culture in Mississippi, people want to learn about that, meet you, talk. Again, has an appeal to Mississippi and our family roots. Again, I think all fits into these types of enterprise opportunities. Rural land values, just quickly on this, and some past surveys I think I shared with you Monday, but in a past survey I've done, and people buying lands in Mississippi, and these will be out-of-state people that are coming in, or in-state residents buying land to recreate on. Most of that is hunting, but to wildlife recreate on. About a third of the value in my survey work, in addition to the ag value, timber resource value, commercial development value, but about a third of the land value in Mississippi is due to wildlife-related recreation. Some of the land types that were particularly drivers of that were forests, these mixed pine hardwood stands, older age class forests that are good wildlife habitats. Also agricultural lands that are producing cereal grains, corn. These are openings for wildlife. Those were key predictors in some of the modeling, regression models. Don't worry about that, but regression models that I ran. So what are the drivers of that land value? These forest and ag lands work. So again, your land is valuable, and the punchline of that, I think over time, it was only increasing value. I think I showed this. It's a good poster man of what NRE, kind of natural resource enterprise. This is John Hyde of Yancey Ranch, Southeast Oregon, who has a cow-calf operation, but he does fly fishing on his place. And so he does very well with this. It helps supplement his cattle income. So again, you can continue to use your traditional uses of the property like he's doing with cattle production, but he is interested in having fly anglers on the property. He does quite well with that. He's booked from April through October in southeastern Oregon. So again, may not be for everybody. He doesn't have to guide these people. They just want to go fishing, and he offers access on his property to this watershed, this river here, Williamson River. So again, he told me too, this has allowed us to stay on our cattle ranch at times, the fly fishing. So again, a way to supplement income if it fits in with your thinking. So that's a segue into talking about what is a business plan, and putting my banker hat, I guess, back on. Let me just make some comments here in thinking out loud. A business plan doesn't have to be a 2,000-page document, 200 pages. It can be 2 pages, but back of the envelope kind of stuff. But it needs to be, I think, the role of it is to help you as a landowner in whatever enterprise you might be thinking about. This applies to opening a hardware store or a bed and breakfast. And my comments would be more related to a natural resource enterprise dealing with wildlife recreation, but you would go through these same mechanics in thinking about it. So it's one of the things it does. If I'm thinking about a business plan, it's a way that I can turn an idea into kind of a written roadmap plan of action. So it gives me steps that I can go through to get my business kind of on track. The second bullet I think is important, and I'm trying to play devil's advocate, so to speak, here a little bit. If I'm not real gung-ho or not completely convinced that my business will succeed, I need to really think about it. So this going through the mechanics of a business plan will help convince you or convince me that my business is viable, that it has an opportunity to succeed. And if I go through these these steps, and then at the end of the day, I said, I'm gonna wait on this. I don't think I quite have it all ready to go. I don't have enough cash on hand to get started. Then that's not a bad decision. That's a good thing. I don't want to come out half-cocked or jump into a business without all the mechanics being and all the things being lined up that it would have more of a chance to fail. In the past, at looking at any kind, and you can Google this and read about it, most businesses, I think it's safe to say, they fail early in the business cycle because they didn't have enough cash on hand or didn't have some of this figured out, and it got too much for them to handle early. And getting ahead of myself here a little bit, but you think about when you start a business, it just makes common horse sense. You're going to have some expenditures up front, and you're starting your business online, which will be bringing revenues in, but that may be a timeline to get those revenues coming in. So you got to have that in mind, that you can make it for a while, so to speak, before the revenues start coming in, and you're in the black with plus revenues. So you'll have those expenditures up front. So you got to be thinking about that. Again, this business plan helps you go through those thought processes. So it serves as a model, and I like to use that business model to help put my business on paper to think through the options for it. Hopefully, and what I've seen in the past, this next bullet, if you're going to borrow money from family members or say the bank, I would encourage you not to do that. If you've got enough cash out of pocket, most NRE type businesses, and again, my conservative nature with money, I guess is my business hat talking here, our banker hat. Most landowners are doing leasing, doing a business like this. They do it out of pocket to get started. That's the best way to do it because you don't owe anybody but yourself that way. But if you're going to be borrowing money, and I'm an ex-banker, as I mentioned, we required a business plan or at least some type of thought process that this potential loan customer has gone through to have cash flow. So me as a banker, I'm going to get my loan repaid over time. So if you have to lend money or have to borrow money, a business plan will help educate that lender as to what you're planning and whether that plan is financially feasible, not only in your mind, but in your family's mind or in your bank's mind as well. It's not static, meaning it's flexible over time, so it can adapt and grow over time to help garner you in different directions as this recreational market continues to open up, or if you diversify into a new, I'm a hunting enterprise, but now I want to do bird watching as well because I've been contacted by people wanting to come on a property bird watch, and I'm going to partner with the Mississippi Audubon to do some birding operation. That's a diversification of what I'm going to do on my property. That would need to be incorporated in my business plan. So it's not static, it's flexible over time. That helps keep my mind on the ball, so to speak, in what I'm doing. So with that in mind, let's talk about some sections of a business plan. And again, to remind you, these slides, nothing magical about them at all, but you'll have availability of these that you can think about. You can get them later. Listen to me do this talk again if you want to. But these will be available to you on the website, so you can come back to these sections. Now, as I mentioned earlier, does it need to be 10 pages per section? No, but at least back of the envelope, a couple legal pad sheets to go through and write some of this down for yourself. And then again, if you're getting money for somebody else, a partner or whatnot, it would need to be a little more extensive, so it would need to be sections. But think about these as your general sections of a business plan. So I like to see first of an executive summary. It's just a brief overview of the operation. What I'm going to be doing, like a fee hunting operation. Me personally, Daryl loves bird dogs. I love to quail hunt, pheasant hunt. I love my dogs, kind of like my kids. I train them a good bit. And let's say my business would be involved with that, where I was taking you on guided quail hunts, maybe on pen release birds, just kind of making this up off the fly here. But that would be the overview of the operation would be about that. So I would give an overview, a summary of that. Give a synopsis of the market. I'm going to be trying to market and get, let's say, older individuals that used to walk with their daddy and their grandfather that want to now introduce their daughter to this. That might be my market. So talk about my market, my management structure, how my business will be structured. It'll be me as a sole proprietorship, or I'm going to be the main part of the business, working with my daughter, working with my son, working with a brother, whatever. That's your talk about your management structure, who's running the business, who's working, who am I employing. Talk about that a little bit. Planned operations, again, getting back to a synopsis of what I'm going to be doing. Having some general comments about these, for me, my financial projections, where I will be going in terms of revenue streams, trends in the market over time. Talk about that a little bit in this section as well. This sets the tone for the project, helps think into more the detailed versions that we're going to get in these sections here to come. So executive summary is good to have. Lots of times, and being a professor, I'm quick to maybe admit this, an executive summary would be the first thing I read to get a thumbnail sketch of what a paper is saying, what a business plan will be saying. Then I'll dive in deeper into some of the sections. But the executive summary, the abstract, if you will be important to draft. I encourage students to do that, think through writing an effective executive summary, because that'll be the most thing that people probably will read. Describing my business, what's the history of the business that I'm getting in? Having some of this about my property, why I'm getting into the business, I'm thinking about the history, the past use of my land. Will I continue to be in forestry production and agriculture? How will this NRE, a hunting operation, bird watching opportunity, how will that fit into my land and the history of my land and this business? Describing the type of industry I'm getting into, having some thought there. The internet is a good resource that you can use to investigate this type of industry, agritourism. Do some investigation there and look at some of the trends of that in the state. That would be the type of industry that we're talking about. And then the outlook and the projections of that agritourism market in the state. There's much written about that, again, with the Mississippi Department of Agriculture on my website. Use that as a resource to get a handle on what the future of the outlook projections of that industry or that business might be. Talk about here in describing my business, what my goals and strategies are related to what I'm going to do in my operations, what the revenue streams are over time, how long I'm going to do this, how will I diversify over time with products services that I may offer. It helps also in this to talk about risks that I may be in, liability issues, what I've done to make my property safe. I'm going to avoid downturns in the market. Let's say COVID has put us all on our heads, so to speak, with many type of business. Actually, rural businesses have done well during this time because with this virus, people want to get away from other people and get outside, and I'm less likely to catch coronavirus if I'm walking a ridge trying to look for turkeys than I will be if I'm going to a place where you got a lot of people. So, but think about these kinds of things and how it will affect economic and tax risks that I may have over time. How will my business succeed in this setting? So how will my agritourism business, how will my quail hunting operation with bird dogs, how will I succeed? Think about that and how that will happen, and talk about that some with the description here in this section. Again, does it need to be 20 pages? I don't think so, but going through the thought process is a good one. So here's something, drilling down a little bit on what I mean in describing your business. And when I was a young man, I'm not young now, as young as I was, but when I was a banker, I remember, and I was just out of school, and I remember them talking about in marketing class, describing a mission statement. I didn't really know what that was. And we went through that process in the bank that I worked with. And I still didn't understand it. But now, after doing that, say when I was a banker, it's important to develop a mission statement for my enterprise, regardless of what it is. So an example, again, getting back to my love of bird dogs and love of turkeys and quail and wild places, my mission would be, let's say, and I'm just making this up off the top, is to provide a premium hunting and outdoor experience on quality lands to a selective range of clientele. So again, back on my bird dog example, I'm going to be trying to get, let's say, older individuals that used to bird hunt with their daddy and granddaddy as a boy or a girl, and they walk with them on the pastures on the place for quail, behind good bird dogs. So they want to get back to that, and that's my mission statement. That's what I'm selling them. I'm going to take you back to walking with your granddad. So that would be something that I would drill down on what my mission is, or agritourism, to bring young folks out to see rural lands, how food and fiber is produced in Mississippi, and to show them me and show them my property. So that would be part of this mission that you're going to do. Now, back on the example, so mission is an overarching statement, but then how am I going to get there? So to think of that, I need to have my mind, I need to have goals and objectives. So a goal might be, in my bird hunting operation, to produce good quality lands, may have some wild coveys out there. We're probably not going to shoot into those wild coveys of bobwhite quail. May have to pin release birds, so we'll have enough for the dogs to point, let's say. But my goal would be to improve the quality of my land, wildlife habitat, to maximize the aesthetic appeal and potential wildlife populations on the ground. So that would be a goal. So that's part. There may be several goals, but that would be one goal that would feed into the mission that I've created for my business. To get to the goal, I'm going to have a measurable step to get to that goal. So using the example of a wildlife habitat to enhance that, how am I going to improve my wildlife habitat? Well, I may do that through developing and implementing an actual plan, a wildlife habitat management plan on the property. And I might have to get some help doing that. I may have to contact a wildlife professor at Mississippi State, or get a farm pond management person, or get someone that knows about farm tours, knows about tourism, get that additional help to develop my plan to increase the wildlife habitat, in this example, on my property. So you have a mission, you have a goal that ties to the mission, and then under each goal, you have measurable, specific objectives that will help you accomplish that goal. I hope that makes sense, but that is a worthwhile stair-step operation to go through in thinking about thinking about putting your business on wheels, so to speak. Now, one thing, most of you are landowners, and that's a great thing, because one of the most valuable nuggets of gold that you have, as you well know, is your land. So that is great. So we've got that hopefully there that you can use. So making a physical resource inventory and also looking at your labor needs, but having that resources inventory is important. So what we're talking about, physical resource, land, the type of land, acreage that I have, the types that I have, forested, ag use, fallow land that's not being used. Describe your land and land cover types and what its present uses are, and how those present uses may change if I do an enterprise like what we're talking about today with a hunting, fishing, or say wildlife watching and agritourism. Well, that change those current uses. If it does, it's fine. Just need to think about that. So think about your land, acreage types, its uses. What buildings do I have? What equipment do I have? What machinery do I have that I can use, that I have that as a resource that I can utilize? If I don't have that, I may have to think about getting a new tractor to put in wildlife supplemental plantings, to maintain the roads, to do my burning in my forest, whatever the case may be. So what are those assets that I've got that I can use? Make a physical listing of that. I'm kind of a note taker type. I think that's my obsessive compulsive nature. But it's good, I think, to make notes of that and keep that as part of this business plan of the resources that you have and what you're going to have. And if you don't have it, you got to get it. Who's going to work this? You, family members. And do I have to hire people? If I have to hire people, what's going wages? What local competition for resources that I might be competing for? You may not have that. Just think about that as a consideration going through who's going to work it. Other inventory of resource, liability insurance. Think about having insurance on your farm. You probably do, but also with an enterprise, you can get insurance there. I can direct you in those ways. I mentioned this, I think last time, but with hunting insurance, there's vendors out there that provide those insurance policy, agritourism as well. One that comes to mind, and I'm not running to them, but with hunting, for example, Mississippi Forestry Association provides insurance through Davis Garmin. So there's avenues that you can get insurance there, and I can help you with that you want to have some coverage there in case of liability, and we'll talk about that a little bit more here in a minute. We had Farm Bill programs yesterday. This is an excellent resource USDA NRCS is offering, as you heard if you participated yesterday, an array of programs to help landowners put marginal land back into wildlife habitat, and they help you do that financially and with technical assistance. So take advantage of those opportunities with the NRCS. We actually have Chuck Lee on the call with us today with the webinar. He can help direct you to the right people with NRCS to see if you qualify for Farm Bill programs. It typically has to be working or has a history of a cropping history on your agricultural lands, but also forested lands, or I have opportunities with programs as well. So don't forget Farm Bill, take advantage of that. The next section let me hit on for me would be, what exactly is my product or service? This is back on the business plan. Describe your product or service in terms that someone from the outside can understand it. So I'm going to be guiding hunts with individuals behind quality bird dogs on pen release quail and pheasants on my property so they can enjoy that opportunity. So what are my features of that and benefits that will make my business unique? So features are your tangible features. I'll be doing guided hunts. I'll provide the dogs. I also provide the guns if you need to use a gun, or you bring your own guns and have shells. I'm feeding lunch. Those features, the benefits of that will be the notion of selling the sizzle and not just the steak. What do they get from a benefit of that? And again, as I mentioned to you, is getting on rural lands. They're getting back to when they used to walk with their grandfather or their father on their property with behind bird dogs. So that's the benefit. It's back to a rural way of life, something they enjoyed when they were younger. describing that market niche or that target market that I'm looking for, that's something to think about describing related to the service and the product that I'm providing. That's the target group that I will be marketing to. I mentioned in my example will be older individuals. Agritourism might be, let's say, church groups, might be schools, school groups. That's my target market in my market niche. How will my offering differ from others, as in other providers? This is not something to get too worried about. I think what I've seen, and I'll use agritourism as an example, if you have multiple vendors, say in the state or in a region of the state, it almost makes a situation where that part of the state becomes a destination for people to come to. So they can go and do a zip line one day and farm tours the next, and then do a bird watching tour. So it kind of it helps serve as draws people in as a destination. So I wouldn't worry about too much with the competition down the road, but it is something I need to know about. If I'm doing, say, guided quail hunts, if someone right down the road is doing that, that may limit my potential success there. So just be aware of what offerings are around you and how mine might differ and differentiate from those that are being provided. Why would they come to me? Why would they come to me for a quail hunt or a farm tour when they might go to someone else? Again, not something to worry about or run you off, but think about that, what your offerings are from competition and how you can make yours unique. Think about licensing and regulations. May not be applicable, but there's certain licenses in counties. Just talk to your county tax assessor, people at the courthouse, or contact Mississippi Development Authority, contact me, and I can help maybe maneuver through some of the licensing and regulations that you might be exposed to. Another section, market research and analysis. This is when I'm looking in my business at the general trends in the industry that I'm involved in, agritourism, doing investigation on the internet, talking to other providers of that service, getting a feel for the industry, helping me think through, again, my target market, who are my main customers, what the potential in business that I have with them. So to find that customer base, profiling that targeted customer, school groups, how am I going to get to them? Contacting local schools, working with parents, working with the local PTA, so I can get to the parents of the students, of the young children. So thinking through that to how am I going to get my customer defined, and then making communication with them. We kind of covered some of that other stuff, and I'll let you have those points to think about. So in a marketing plan, we did a lot of this with website and social media marketing. Jamie Doris did on Wednesday. If you didn't see that talk, thought she did a fantastic job. Circle back to my web site and look at this talk again. But that's related to getting the word out about my business. How will people find out about me? So giving some thought to a marketing plan is important. I'm going to want to do that. So again, describing my product, you've already done that, but that's part of your marketing plan. How am I going to price it? I get questioned all the time on hunting leases. What can I charge for a hunting lease? And so I'll work with landowners and describe, well, tell me about how many acres you got, what your land cover is. Is it timber? Is it ag ground, fallow ground? I need a description of that, and I can help differentiate out what a potential price may be. How close are you to an urban area? How close are you to Jackson or the Gulf Coast? That could influence price. Lots of things going, but think about that. How much? Just don't pull a price out of the air. And I actually have seen that more than I would like to see it. So think about pricing and how I'm going to price my product. Cost plus. So if I've got a certain amount of cost to do my quail hunt, well, am I going to do it for free? Well, of course not. So whatever it costs me, I need to have some margin added to that I'm going to have to charge to make it worth my while for my profit margin. So that's what cost plus basis, what I'm talking about. Look at what competition charges, like I'm back on hunting leases. You can cue me on looking at what land prices are or hunting lease charges are per acre in the state. That's competition based. So you can see what they're charging. May not be the right amount they're charging, but you can see what's being done out there. I mentioned on the leasing again, I'll restate it. Secretary of State's office in Mississippi handles hunting leases on 16th section land. You can find out what those prices are. So anyway, back on pricing, just think about that and give that some thought. So in my marketing plan too, to hit key selling points to myself, so I make sure I get that information out to my customer base, how I'm going to advertise. Many times what I've seen in the past is these NREs will not market, and that's fine. Back on the example of Trey Montgomery in South Alabama, and this was kind of shocking to me, but I thought it was kind of neat. He does fee hunting, trophy deer, whitetail deer, and wild turkey, and he's the one that does the fishing as well. And he doesn't advertise, so people just have found him over the years and are repeat customers and come back to him. So he doesn't need to advertise, which is great. But he had to get that established at some point in time. So think about how I'm going to get my customer base established and keeping them as recurring customers so you can build upon that relationship. So again, think about how I get the word out with advertising, how much I'm going to spend to do that. With social media marketing, you don't need to spend a lot with that, but you probably need to get some expertise to help you design a website maybe, or educate yourself on how to do social media marketing particularly. That's the new game now in town, and that's important to do that. And it's cost efficient. It doesn't cost that much to do, but you need to start it right. So having obviously my contact information and then what my sales forecasting may be. And again, do you have to do all of this? No, but just thinking through these processes are important. Now, my day-to-day operations or my operating plan, that little segment of the back of the envelope, think about what I'm going to do on a day-to-day basis, have where I'm located at, what facilities I have, rural accommodations I may have, thinking about your physical resources, what improvements I need. Am I going to do that on day one? Maybe not, but I can cash flow that over time with my hunting lease revenues, with my fee hunting revenues, with agritourism to improve the property over time. So it's a long-term investment, but having those visions of improvement of the business are important. And then who's going to work it? I'm going to work with family or however that will be, hiring people, however you need to do that. Next section, think about at least your management team, a management structure, key personnel that are working it, how I'm going to pay myself, how I'll own it as a sole proprietorship or develop a limited liability corporation that we talked about on Tuesday, forming an S corporation. Give that some thought. You may want to talk to some business folks, a business attorney or an accountant about that. Think about that on the front end and do some thinking through that before you start your business. And then, of course, paying taxes. The financial plan section, do you have to do all this? No, but I think it's important to at least think through for my revenue streams and what cash I will have to start my business and to keep my business in an ongoing concern basis. So your financial resource, what I'm talking about there is available capital and cash that I have. What sources of those cash? What are those sources? When I start my business, what my startup expenses might be right off the pot, and I'll need to be able to cash flow that, have the money to be able to do that to get started. Any outstanding debt, you may not have that, I hope you don't, but if I'm servicing an existing loan, think about that I still have to make the land payment to the bank, still have to make the land payment on the road improvement that I did, building the barn, whatever it is. Think about that as a debt, and the bank wants their money every month, so I need to be thinking about how I'm going to service that. But hopefully you don't have a big debt load, but if you do, think about that. Opportunity cost, if I don't do any of this, if I don't do any of this, what's the opportunity cost of doing nothing and just putting that money in mutual funds and putting it in the money market account? So that's an alternative to doing all of this. So think about the either or, your cost benefit of that. What documents related to a financial plan? I've already mentioned having some type of sales forecast that I've had on how many customers I'll have and the revenue stream from them. Thinking about a financial statement. Thinking about a financial statement as in your revenue streams, what your expenditures will be, and our net profit or our income coming in. That third bullet's important, particularly for early start out businesses, cash flow statement. What I mean by that is what we've already mentioned. There'll be expenditures that I have right off the top that I have to be able to handle to get my hunting lease started. Need to advertise that lease, need to do some improvements on the roads on the property, need to put in some food plots to say bring wildlife out that can be seen for the bird watching tour for the hunters. What cost I'm going to have in that? How am I going to pay for it? So I have to have cash on hand or have some influx of cash to be able to handle those expenses. And again, as I've already mentioned, most businesses that will have trouble, they won't have enough cash early in the business cycle to be able to handle those expenditures, and they get in a financial bind and they have trouble then. So think about that money you have to have up front to get yourself on your feet, and then have the revenue start coming in, and then you can handle your expenditures on more of a pay-based basis. So cash flow statement is important. And in balance sheet, mostly that's back on your inventory, your resource, looking at your assets. You have some liabilities on those assets and what your net worth, or what accountants call stockholder equity. So you don't have to do all this, but if there was one to pick here, particularly cash flow statement, having that money early and looking at some of those expenditures early will be important. Vern, could you touch the screen for me up there so it doesn't time us out while it's doing that? Thanks, sir. I talked about this earlier, and I'll just hit it quickly again. Legal issues, particularly with having people on your land. This is what I found over the years in doing this, and rightfully so. You as a landowner may be concerned, you should be, but concerned about paying guests on your property, and what's the legal liability that I have in doing this. This is what drives most people away from doing an NRE or doing a hunting lease. I don't want to get somebody hurt on the property and then I get sued to lose my property. So what Mississippi law requires me to do in having guests on my property, paying guests, is just what a reasonable and prudent person would do to reduce liability on the property. What that means, if I have existing hazards, try to reduce those, eliminate them where I can, and those that I can't, like the mean bull on the back 40, I want to keep Ferdinand, is to warn them about Ferdinand. Don't go on the back 40 because Ferdinand's back there. Just simple brass tacks, common sense. Just warn people of hazards and put that in writing, put that in your leases, put that in your working agreements, put that in your liability waivers, where your paying guests will know that those are the hazards on the property. So that's what a court or a judge, you won't probably be in court, but that's what a judge would want to see you doing, something that is reasonable and prudent to try to limit your liability exposure on your property. I don't see too many judges in the state that are hanging judges won't hang a landowner. You're providing a good public service and allowing people on your property. So they're not so much after you as you're the good lady, the good man out there providing that access on your property. But it's good to think about this to limit some of the exposure that you might have. And back on leases, having well-written leases, talking about ways that you reduce that liability or hazard or eliminated it, having that documented in the lease where the lessees will know that and sign that, that's being prudent. So that you as a landowner, you're covering your bases. Talked about earlier, won't get into it too much today, but using liability waivers, I think that's a good idea. The way you use waivers are important. Having your guests sign waivers. Now, if you're doing an agritourism operation, and this is the point I'm making here, don't let the tail wag the dog, for example. Don't get so worried about this that if I had a busload of kids show up on the property, there's 100 of them on the bus, and little Jimmy forgot his liability waiver because his mama didn't give it to him this morning. Do I leave little Jimmy on the bus? No. You know, thankfully I got 95 of them, or 90. Don't let that run. Don't let that completely ruin the day for you. Don't worry about it too much, but be thankful that I got what I've got and go forward. But it's good to use waivers. I think I would encourage you to do that, particularly in Mississippi. Having insurance, we've already talked about. And then go back and look at the day 2 where we talked about legal issues and business structures with the use of limited liability corporations, LLCs, for example. You can structure your business in a way where you can limit your liability. Just a quick example that I used Monday, and I'll just give that again. Let's say the picture you see here of turkey hunting. If I was going to have Jeff come down, let's say he's in Memphis, Tennessee, and turkey hunt with me, and he's going to be there, say in the spring season, and I'll use this as a waiver example in the business structure as well. Back on the waiver, if he gets there that morning of the hunt, the day before, and I stick a liability waiver in his face, what's he going to do? He's going to have to sign it or go home. But if I'd sent it to him early and let him thought about it, say, look, it's a way to keep my liability insurance down. Looking forward to you coming to be with me. So send me that waiver back. We'll see you in March. That would be the way to handle liability waiver and to use that. Related to business structure, say with a hunting operation, would I do business as a lease or a fee hunting operation as sole proprietorship? I would encourage you not to do that, because if I got Jeff hurt on the property, I might be, if I was found negligent in court, he would have a claim against me personally, my house, my retirement, any money I may have. But with a business structure, I could create a limited liability corporation to run my hunting operation where I'm removed from it. And so that's where my liability exposure would be in that LLC hunting operation. If I want to protect my property, for example, I could put my property in the landholding LLC, and as Mike talked about Tuesday, then my hunting operation LLC could lease the land for $1 a year, let's say, or any number. Could lease the land. That's where the hunting will be, but the hunting operation doesn't own the land. So if I was found negligent, got someone hurt, and they had a claim against my hunting operation, you can't get the land because the land's not owned by that hunting LLC operation. So think about your business structure. Go back and watch the video on Tuesday. Way to limit your potential liability issues. And should I have 15 different LLCs? Probably not, but you should at least think about some ways to limit that liability where LLCs and structure can certainly do that. Now, back on business planning, what are some of the pitfalls that people can fall into? Not creating a plan, not doing any of this, I think could be problematic, that you haven't thought through and convinced yourself that your business can be successful. Not being complete in your market research investigation of what I'm going to be involved in, agritourism, a hunting operation, fishing, wildlife watching. Doing that research is important. To go through if my business be viable in this type of market, in this industry. Not being objective. I've heard bankers say there's too much blue sky in this proposal. So being as hardcore as you can and thinking through it objectively, because you want to do that so you don't start a business that could get you in problems financially. So being objective, not making too many assumptions. You have to assume some things, but assume the real facts is important, and not making too many blue sky assumptions, so to speak. Not being thorough in your plan, lack of flow in thinking and writing your plan is a problem I've seen in the past, and I've already said a good bit about. Lack of cash early is one of the problems that I see with any kind of business. So having a little bit of cash is good to get started, and then letting your revenue streams take over and start cash flowing your cost. So what I've seen has been successful by these NRE operators over time, and we've kind of already talked about this, starting simply in what I'm going to do, like my guided quail hunts, but then maybe diversifying over time and having nature walks and having bird watching opportunity. So diversifying over time is something to think about, bringing in new revenue streams. Remember, you're in the entertainment business. I've had a landowner tell me before, I'm thinking about agritourism, but, I don't really like kids. So I don't know, is that going to work? I said, we need to rethink that, because that's going to be your primary customer base. So you need, in these types of businesses, other than maybe hunting leases, because you're not going to be entertaining those lessees per se in a hunting lease per se, but you're still going to be dealing with them. But any of these type of service enterprises like this, you're going to be dealing with people on more of a repetitive nature. You need to be able to entertain them. You need to like people, like to be able to talk to folks because they want to talk to you. So you're in the entertainment business. Work with what you have on your land. We talked about that. Let those resources work for you, but don't spend, I would say, a lot of money up front and building ponds or whatever you got to do. Do that over time. Work what you got so you can cash flow it over time. And also that helps in sustainability of your natural resources and also your financial resources. So with that, I think some of it, as I mentioned, NREs can help you enhance income on your property. They also enhance conservation, increases wildlife populations. You can certainly control who's out there on your property. What I found before in working with clientele, many times if they're not living on the property, they're absentee landowners, and say they're in another state, they may not be aware of who's on their property at any given time. So that can be a problem. You're not exposed to liability with that per se, but you want to know who's on your property, and that's a concern that landowners have. So controlling access is important, particularly if you're an absentee landowner. And these NREs, hunting lease, that kind of thing can help you kind of do that because you have eyes on the ground that you know. And finally, promoting land stewardship and retention, I think is good that these businesses can do. And that only increases the property value of your property. Excuse me. There's my contact information there if I can help you. That last bullet there is my website. Go to it, naturalresources.msstate.edu, and a good bit of this business wildlife management type information is there. And we have videos as well. These webinars will be posted there. You can go back and look at those over time. So with that, I've enjoyed my comment suite this morning. Do you have any questions? Let me get the chat box open.
We got a couple.
And we'll see if we can do that. Vern, what do we got?
One was, what agritourism entity should I register with to get extra liability protection?
So that would be with the agritourism limited liability law in the passed by the Mississippi legislature. You can Google this, Mississippi Department of Agriculture and Commerce. You can register your agritourism business with them. And when you register it with them, you can then get signage from them that you can place on your property, that you're doing farm tours. Those signs obviously are visible. That's a requirement that you have through the law. They provide those signs to you, and that gives you some inherent risk. If someone gets hurt by inherent risk of nature on your property, then the state of Mississippi, the agritourism law, will help cover you. Now, you should still, in my mind, have insurance, do the right things that we talked about to limit liability, limit hazards on the property, do those things in addition to. But agritourism operators, you've got that state law, the agritourism limited liability law, that can help you. So contact the Department of Agriculture here in Mississippi, and they can get you registered, and that's how you get that protection.
Someone asked just briefly, what is the ultimate purpose of a business plan?
What is the
ultimate purpose of a business plan?
I think the ultimate purpose is kind of a roadmap. Well, two things there. And again, my financial conservative hat on. You want to convince yourself that this business venture will work. And if I'm not convinced, there's no reason in the world to do it. So a business plan process will make you go through those steps to say, is my business viable? If it's not going to be viable, let's don't do it. Not making a bad decision is a good decision. So do that up front. The other things, number two, for a business plan, I think it's a good roadmap to help guide you along the way in the life cycle of your business. Whatever it is, a plumbing store, a plumbing operation, a hardware store, a restaurant, a natural resource enterprise with agritourism, with a hunting lease, whatever it may be. It helps as a roadmap for you to make the proper moves over time and keep you on track with your business.
Next question is, where can I find up-to-date information on pricing organic crops?
The Department of Agriculture and Commerce in Mississippi will have that. I would look there. You can also that's a good question. I don't know if I actually know the answer to that. Farmers markets as well will have websites, and they'll have some pricing in what they're charging for certain crops. Produce, vegetables on that. Usually, as you know, organic will be higher priced. One that comes to mind, not to go down a rabbit trail, but we did a workshop at a property outside of Brookhaven who was an organic farmer, and he actually he was growing turmeric, and he sold that to one of the distributing houses of organic turmeric. So he sold it in a national sense, and so he just produced it locally. Plus, he participated in local farmers markets as well, and one in Jackson. So he had a couple of venues that he sold to. So you don't have to be the primary seller. You can also sell to an agricultural co-op as another venue for another potential customer for organic produce. But I would go and look at the Department of Ag and Commerce, then look at farmers market websites and see what some of the pricing is, and ask around people that do that. Would be good. They could help you. I wouldn't know to tell you what some of the organic produce and vegetables would be, but there's information out there for that.
We have someone asks, what is the minimum acreage for hunting or pond area permission?
Ponds can be different range. I mean, on our property, we have about an 8-acre pond, and that would be big enough for, say, some limited fishing on. Now, for example, I was giving you the South Alabama gentleman, he had 100 acres of different ponds. So all the impounds, about 100 acres on his property. And he was more of ongoing concern with having people coming to fish in his ponds. Now, he limited the number. He was entertaining those, and he had a smaller number that come in a period of time. But he had 100 acres. But you depends on what you've got on your property. I would think about it like that. Now, fish out facilities like on catfish can be smaller acreage impoundments where you're intensively managing a fish species, a fish resource, and you're just fishing, taking all the catfish out. That can be smaller acreage. On a leasing process where you've got people coming in or when they buy membership into a fishing lease, that would be a larger acreage, usually acreage lake, 20, 25, 30 acre, larger type lake that can handle the pressure of that and handle that over time. So it depends on what your business model is there to answer that question. But I can help you directly with some of that if you want to follow that with me.
Someone asked, what are some good resources for capitalizing small business, such as Mississippi Land Bank, or et cetera?
The Mississippi Land Bank, Federal Land Bank, is one to go to. Particularly, they fund, or they'll help you buy land if you need to improve your land with loans, and they can also fund some of these ventures like that. Your local bank can be another outlet as well. But the Federal Land Bank would be a good first step stop to talk about this, because they finance land in some of these NRE type businesses. I would think about how much money, go through this business planning process, think about how much money you might need early on, and then you'll know how much you're looking at on a lending basis. And you can get back in touch with me, and we can talk. I can talk more about that with you.
Any tips on how an absentee owner can find out about other local hunting leases and local wages for employees?
Yeah, I can help you with some of that on Mississippi land. And as I mentioned to you, 16th section land, there's 16th section property in every county, and every 16th section in the county will be designated for local school revenues. And so it's public land, and they'll cut timber, they rent it for farming, they do other things with it. They also lease it for hunting. You can look at those hunting leases through the Mississippi Secretary of State's office. They have a website up for every tract of 16th section ground in the state by county that's leased. That's public information. You can find that at Mississippi Secretary of State's office here in Mississippi. Obviously, you look at what they're charging per acre. And I can help you. I can't, I won't have a crystal ball to tell you, but based on your land cover, your forest types, the quality of the wildlife habitat on your properties, contact me, and I can kind of go through some of that with you and help you in potential leasing prices per acre. But that information is out there on those two sources, 16th section land and then me. So.
This question is a bit specific. It says, what agency or department do I need to contact for guidelines to open a bed and breakfast business in the Delta part of the city?
Mississippi Development Authority would be a good source to touch base. That's in the state agency in Jackson. Also, the bed and breakfast could be part of an agritourism considered operation as well. So contact Mississippi Department of Ag and Commerce. There is a Mississippi Bed and Breakfast Association. If you'll Google that in your internet browser, that's an association of other operators of B&Bs. So that would be a good source of information as well. And they can actually help you in getting your business, your bed and breakfast started. They're a real cohesive group. And again, that's part of what I was telling earlier, that making Mississippi a destination for coming to stay in B&Bs. They work together to enhance that. And you have a set of clientele that really like doing that and will come and stay in multiple B&B. So Google the Mississippi Bed and Breakfast Association, and I would encourage you to contact them, maybe join them, and they can help you with starting your B&B. If there are no further questions, enjoy being with you quite a bit today. As you think of things, contact me back, and we can kind of steer you to places that good sources of information. Go to my website there, that naturalresources.mstate.edu, and that can help you as well. More information there, and we have some videos online, including this webinar you can go back through. So I've enjoyed being with you. I want to introduce a real good friend of mine. I wanted Jeff to say a few words. This may be of interest to some of you. I just wanted you to be aware of him. Jeff Little is with our Mississippi State, come on in, Jeff, Development Foundation. And I asked Jeff to come by to talk about what does the Development Foundation do, and what do you do with our college of forest resources, and how might these folks might be interested in some of that?
Thank you, Daryl. I'm Jeff Little. I'm the Director of Development for the Bulldog Forest Program in Mississippi State. Before I get into that, I just want to commend you on what you do here, Daryl. This is a phenomenal resource that we have here at Mississippi State University, and Daryl is one of the best in the business. We're lucky to have him. Thank you for having me here today.
Thank you.
Daryl and I are in somewhat of a similar business. We try to serve the people of the state of Mississippi since we're a Grandland institution. Daryl has a little broader reach than I do. Mine a very specific group of landowners in Mississippi that I deal with personally. The Bulldog Forest benefits Mississippians as a whole by virtue of the academic research and teaching and demonstration that we do there. But on a day-to-day basis, I am out visiting with landowners that are interested in the long-term disposition of their property and the conservation ethic and practices that go on those properties. I deal primarily with people generally that have owned land for a long time. They have managed that property. They oftentimes, some of them were born on these properties. They've been in the family for many, many years. Sometimes not. Sometimes they just have purchased the property but have developed it over the years, and it's a special place for them. Oftentimes, there are Mississippians that don't have a long-term plan for what they're going to do with that property. People move away. They're absentee landowners. They don't have children. Their children have moved off. They don't know what they're going to do with the piece of property. They don't want it sold off, portioned out, divided up, developed. They don't want to see Dollar General right there where they have been trying to raise quail for the last 30 years. And that's where Mississippi State University comes in. The MSU Foundation and Mississippi State University have this bulldog forest program that I work with. What we will do that not many other universities in North America will do is take in gifts of timberland or row crop, special pieces of property, and we commit to holding those properties long term. We hold these properties in perpetuity. If we won't sell it, we won't get rid of it, and we'll manage it however the landowner wants us to manage it.
That's important.
Very, very much so. It's one of the few, like I said, we're one of the few universities in North America that will do this. Any university will take your piece of property and turn around and flip it.
Right.
And, they use that revenue for wonderful things, scholarships, things of that nature. But there are a lot of people that don't want that land sold off. So we bring that property in. For instance, like, let's say Daryl Jones has a piece of property somewhere, let's say it's Noxubee County, Ocklawaha County, that he's had for years and years, and he's enjoyed farming, manicuring the timber and hunting turkeys on it. And he wants it to stay like that. He wants it to remain in hardwood timber, and he wants the turkeys to flourish there. And so.
And that'd be right.
That's right. That's right. And I need to talk to you about that turkey picture I saw, by the way. March 15th will soon be upon us. But either during his lifetime, he can make a gift of that property, or he, through an estate plan. I do a lot of estate planning with donors. That property could come into the Bulldog Forest portfolio, and it would be there forever. And it would be the Daryl Jones Forest, part of the Bulldog Forest.
Right.
And an added benefit, you can tell us what we are going to do with it.
Right. Which would be important.
Which would be very important. You may not want all that old hardwood clear cut, right. Or you may have 200 acres of pine plantation that you don't mind,
right,
as long as we replant it, and that's what we do.
Right.
That property comes in Daryl's name or his family name, however he wants to name it. And then another benefit is that Daryl gets to direct us with the timber revenue or whatever revenue that we derive off of this property. He gets to tell us what we do with it at Mississippi State University. Daryl's a big turkey hunter, so he may want to establish a scholarship for upland game bird students. He may want to, or he may be interested in baseball or
right.
engineering.
Right.
You can place that money wherever you want to at Mississippi State. But so he's created an outdoor classroom that would, Dr. Mark McConnell say, could go out there on your place and do the research that he needs to do to help our turkey population. So he can take his students out there with him and teach them to be the next generation of wildlife biologists.
I've actually had, and I'm not speaking for y'all out there listening to this, but I've had landowners say just that. Oh, look, I'd like to offer my property as a classroom.
Absolutely.
How can I get involved? And just don't know how to do that. And don't know who to call. What do I need to do? So
absolutely.
And while they're living, even.
While they're living, yeah. We have a lot of those landowners that are not in the Bulldog Forest program or not going to be in the Bulldog Forest program, but they still make that property available to us, and it's extremely valuable. We have to train these students. We have to do the research, and so we can give all of this information to Daryl so he can and deliver it to you. So we basically preserved Daryl's land in perpetuity. we're training students, we're helping our faculty do their jobs and then deliver that to you. And I know that this probably sounds way out of bounds for most of the people on this, give my property away. Well, you may know someone that doesn't know where they should dispose of their property long term, who needs a steward like Mississippi State University and our professionals to take care of their land. It's a wonderful program. We've educated so many students, so many research projects. And like I say, we're one of the few people in North America that will do it. And you can Google Bulldog Forest and find my information and see some of our videos and read more about it. What am I leaving out there?
I don't think you're leaving out a lot. And go back to something I said, not to replow the ground again, but, and I can't speak for y'all that are out there listening, but I've been doing these kind of events with these good folks, Jeff, since probably in earnest since 2004, somewhere in there. So almost 20 years now. And many folks will fit kind of in that range. And many of them half of them in my survey are absentee landowners.
Yeah.
And they may or may not have children or they live in another state. And I just want my land to be taken care of. So what you're talking about, I think hits kind of close in the strike zone as people like that.
We have several donors that are absentee landowners, Illinois, Michigan, all over the U.S. They somehow find us on the internet.
Right.
And they don't want the property sold. They want somebody that knows what they're doing to take care of it.
Right.
And we've got the resources. We have a forest operations unit here on campus with our forest supervisor, Jonathan Stoll. We have the wildlife professionals that know what they're doing, and they just don't have the know-how or are unable to manage their property like they want.
Don't know who to call.
Don't know who to call. And so now you guys do know who to call.
Yeah.
But I don't have, unless you have.
Well, I think there was a couple of questions. Vern,
those were more comments and questions.
Okay. Well, thank you, Jeff, for being here. I want these good folks to know of you.
I appreciate you letting me.
And it's all in the box here. I think because of good folks like these landowners, we have a rule, and this is I guess my talk is somewhat biased. We have a good core of landowners that obviously own Mississippi and some of the most beautiful lands we've got. And it would be my hope that we can conserve those and they would stay out there like this in not only their private ownership, but in ownership that can help create value of that property over time. Because, last time I checked, they're not making any more land.
No, they're not.
Especially good land.
That's
with turkeys on.
That's right. which is our next conversation. As soon as we get off the.
Jeff, thank you for being here. Everyone out there, thank you for being here. We really enjoyed this, and I hope this webinar has been interesting to you. And go back and look at the other ones again, and just let me know as you think through this. I'm the resource for you. Contact us. Look at the website there on my slide, the NRE website. And if there's any way I can help you improve your property, and we can talk through some of these options for you, I'm all for doing that. So thank you for being here with us today. Jeff, appreciate you.
Thank you
very much on what you do. And thank y'all. Y'all have a good weekend, and we'll talk to you, I hope, soon. Thank you.